Welcome to Education on Cloud. Today we will see the important questions from your chapter 1 called as exception handling in Python. Okay. So under this chapter the important questions are: what are exceptions? List and explain the built-in exceptions in Python. Okay. And next, briefly explain the process of exception handling. Explain rise and assert statement with an example. Explain catching exceptions using try and catch block. What is the use of finally clause? Almost all the topics, okay, which is there under this chapter, okay, you can see here, okay. If you study these things, you will be able to answer the questions that can be raised from this particular chapter. First thing they are asking is exception. Since the chapter itself is about the handling exceptions in Python, you should know what are meant by exceptions. There a one more question or a can be asked only what is exceptions, or in detail they will ask to explain about the exceptions there. So you should be able to answer for any type of questions there. Okay. Then they are asking list and explain built-in exceptions in Python. There are too many built-in functions in the Python library. First list out all the exceptions and then give one line definition or explanation for each of the exceptions there. And next they are asking us to explain the process of exception handling. We know what is exception, what are the built-in exceptions available. Now whenever an exception is raised, how that can be handled, okay, that process you should explain in detail. Explain rise and assert statements with an example. What these two statements you should explain in detail. And whenever you have the exceptions occurred there, how to catch those exceptions manually using try and catch block, you should explain that. And then at the end, use of finally clause. Okay, so how can you use finally clause in your program? What is the necessary of that? That you should give as an answer for the fifth question. Okay, so first we will see what are exceptions and the built-in exceptions. First you should give a definition. As I said, an exception is a Python object that represents an error. Okay, so what is an exception in Python? It is an object that will actually show that there is an error at this particular point there. When an error occurs during the execution of a program, an exception is said to have been raised. Okay, so you know that what is exception. This is an object. It's a Python object which will show or which will inform you that there is an error. But when the errors are rectified, means when the errors are actually found during the execution of the program. Okay, see here, when the execution started, in the execution phase, if there is any kind of errors, okay, then that kind of errors are known as exceptions here. Okay, and built-in exceptions you should explain now. First they are asking us to list, so it's your left to you that you will list and explain, or directly you can explain, but then sometimes for listing also the marks will be calculated accordingly. So better way to list first and then explain, but here directly I have given the explanation along with that. Okay, so but you should list out everything first. The first exception is syntax error. When do you say that there is a syntax error in your program? Okay, what is this exception is called as? It is raised when there is an error in the syntax of the Python code. Any programming language will have a particular rules and regulations that should be compulsorily followed by any programmer. If you do not follow that rules, the computer will not understand the code properly. So they are saying any error that is found during the found in the syntax of the program, then that type of exceptions are called as syntax errors. Okay, and next one you have the value error exception. Okay, value error exception is raised when built-in method or operation receives an argument that has the right data type but mismatched or inappropriate values. Means if you want to pass integer type, you are going to pass integer, but there again one more condition you should check whether you are going to pass a negative number or a positive number. Instead of that, some other thing you are going to pass. So these the values that you pass as a parameter, if that mismatches, then you will call that type of exceptions are value error exceptions. Okay, and then you have IO error. What is IO error? Input output errors there. It is raised when a file specified in a program statements cannot be opened. Okay, when you are dealing with a files concept and you are trying to open a file which cannot be opened there, then that kind of files is known as IO, means that kind of exceptions are known as IO errors. Then keyboard interrupt. Okay, it is raised when the user accidentally hits the delete or escape key while executing a program, due to which the normal flow of the program will be interrupted. The execution will be happening in between. Suddenly the user presses any of the key in the keyboard or the delete key or escape key, which will terminate the program execution, or a misflow of or the continuity or the normal flow will not be there for the program execution. Import error. When this exception is said to be raised, when the requested module definition is not found, okay, then you will have a import error exception raised. Zero division error means whenever you are going to do this division operation, you are going to divide the numeric values there, and both the values should be non-zero values. Whenever you try to divide a number with 0, you will have zero division error occurred. Means the denominator that you specify always should be a non-zero number. It is raised when the denominator in a division operation is 0. When such kind of operation you are trying to do by giving the denominator as 0, then you will have zero division error exception, saying that you cannot divide a number by 0. Overflow error exception. It is raised when the result of a calculation exceeds the maximum limit for a numeric data type. Okay, integer will have some some bytes of memory stored used there. Similarly, character, float, like this. Okay, each and every data type will have the limit, okay, for that particular data type. When the result, after we compute any of the evaluate any expression, the result of that expression is leading to the means if it is that maximum limit, okay, of the other data types there, then what you will say, there is a overflow error exception occurred. Okay, it should be either less or equal. If it goes above the limit, okay, then you will say error. Which type of error exception is that? Overflow error exceptions. Apart from that, there are many other exceptions given in your textbook. You can just list out and then explain that. Next question says that explain briefly the process of exception handling from the step an error encountered till it is been cached and displayed the message. What and all the process that is happening inside is what? The handling exception process. Okay, so first thing is what? An error encountered in the method. In any block of the program, if an error is encountered, then what will happen first is a Python object will be created, which is called as an exception object, and after creating the object, exception is raised. Means it will notify that the exception is occurred there. And after that, if a exception is raised, what the runtime machine should do? The runtime machine should search for the appropriate exception handlers in the current method. If there is any exception handler methods in the current block or current method, that will be executed, or else if it is not specified in that particular block, it will be checked in the reverse sequence in the stack. Okay, see here. For this, again, two things it can happen. If it is found, what is happening? If it is not found, what the runtime system should do now? The runtime system searches for the exception handler in the current method or the current block. If the exception handler is found, what is an exception handler? Whenever a runtime errors are occurring, means it is an exception there, what the program should notify to the user, or how the exception should be handled. Okay, this is what the runtime machine should do there. Okay, if that block is already having this exception handler, then it will execute the code catching an exception only when it is found, okay, inside the block where the exception was actually raised. If in that block where exception was raised, there is no handler, means there is no exception handler, then the search will be made in the stack. See, searches for methods in call stack in the reverse sequence order, forwarding the exception there. Again, here if it is found, it will execute and then terminate the program. Okay, if here also it is not found, directly the program is been terminated. First write the flow diagram, which will actually it's better way of writing this. Okay, so the picture will explain more about what you write there. Okay, so instead of writing so much of summaries there, if you write one picture in which you are going to explain each and everything properly, the step by step, okay, that is very much like very good practice of doing that. And after writing the diagram, means the flow chart, you can go ahead with the explanation about each and everything what I explained you now. Okay, so next question is explain rise and assert statements with an example. Sometimes what happens, forcefully you would like to raise the exceptions in your program. Okay, there will be no inbuilt exceptions used. You will create an exception and you will raise it. Okay, for doing that you have two statements used, rise and assert. Rise statement can be used to throw an exception. Okay, if you want to throw the exceptions for some other block, okay, you will be using the rise statement, and you should write the syntax also along with the example. The syntax is as follows: raise exception name and open the bracket, this is the square bracket, inside that you have arguments, and always whatever you write inside the square brackets will be optional. It's not mandatory to give the means arguments for that particular method there, because just raise an exception name is also sufficient there. Along with that, if you want to display some message along with the exception, you can write the arguments inside this. See here, the argument is generally a string that is displayed when an exception is raised. Okay, example, zero division error. If you want to say the user that this is what the error or the exception is occurred, then you can write this arguments inside the square brackets. Okay, rise is a keyword and exception name is any name that you would like to give there. Okay, so see this example here, we are doing it in the interactive mode, so you will have these prompts used here, okay, which is the greater than symbols. Usually 3 times we will be writing that. You already know why we are going to use this. Okay, so first line says that you have a list created with all the numbers as an integers there, 40, 50, 60 and 70, and the name of a list is numbers, and you have length is equal to 0. Now what I should do that, I should find the length of the list called as number, because numbers is a name given for the list that you created. In that, how many elements are stored you should find, and when you try to find that, whatever the length that you have assigned that to this, okay, if it is getting greater or it is becoming lesser than, then that time you should raise an exception. See here, numbers is equal to 40, 50, 60, 70, length is equal to 0. If length is greater than the length of the numbers, here length is equal to what? 0. And that 0, if it is greater than the numbers is what? The list name actually. So length, len, is a inbuilt method available in the Python module for computing the length of the list, okay, or length of the tuple. So likewise, length will always count the number of elements inside that. It will return an integer value which will hold the count there. Here the count will be 4 because total 4 elements are there. So length of numbers, here you will get it as 4, and here length is equal to 0. 0 greater than 4, then an error will be raised, or else, okay, what happens? Else part will be printed, which is print length. What is stored in length? 0. That should be printed there. Okay. So this is, okay, as I said, error will be raised, but how are you going to raise the error? This particular statement in your program is raising the exception there. See, raise index error. Okay, and this is the name of the exception. This is a keyword. If it is not true, the condition is false there, then it comes to the else part and it will print the length whatever it is assigned there. Next is assert statement. The assert statement in Python is used to test an expression in the program. What is the use? Testing an expression in the program. If the condition goes false, then do some statements. Okay. If the result after testing comes false, then the exception is raised. When do you say that exception is raised? When a testing is resulted into false. Okay, example, if you say 0 greater than 8, this condition is what? True actually. But when you say 8 greater than 0, this condition is false. When false conditions are given, then that time the exceptions are said to be raised here. This statement is generally used in the beginning of the function or after a function call to check for valid input. In which part of a program you will have this assert statements used? Either in the beginning or in the call statement. Okay, after the call statements it will be checked whether you have a proper input or not. And now we will write the syntax then. Syntax includes assert, which is a keyword. Then you will write the expression. What is this expression? This is actually the condition that you want to check. That conditional expression will be written here, and inside that arguments. If it is necessary, you include, or else you can just leave there because you have this square bracket shown. So the square brackets indicates optional arguments. Okay. So see this particular program here. This program will actually check the number if it is greater than 0 or not. Okay. If it is 0, means if it is less than 0, the exception will be raised, or else no exception will be raised and the square of the number will be computed. Print use of assert statement. Define negative check number. this is a user defined function inside the program, and the name of the function is negative check, and the parameter that is taking is the number. Okay, this will hold some value. That value you should check whether that is greater than or equal to 0. So that you will put it inside the expression. Okay, so this expression looks like this: assert, open the bracket, number greater than or equal to 0. If the condition is true, then go to the next line, print number into number. It means square of that number you just print. Okay, now this part will not be executed when the condition is true. Okay, now say the condition is becoming false, there means you have a negative number given and that negative number is greater than or equal to 0. It's a false condition there. Oops, negative number will be shown as your output there, which is nothing but an exception will be raised. This is a user defined function. So space indentation is very much important to differentiate the block there. And then you have print negative check of 100, print negative check of minus 350. So can you say what these two statements are? First you have print, and inside that you have negative check of 100. This one, negative check of 100, is a function call made to this particular function. This will be given control to this particular method, and 100 will be copied to number 100 greater than 0. Yes. So 100 into 100, whatever the value you get, that will be printed. And similarly, after executing this, again the control will be given to this place, print negative check of minus 350. Once again the same function you are going to call. Now this becomes number is having minus 350, minus 350 greater than or equal to 0. Condition is false. Now you will not get this print statement executed. Instead this oops negative number will be shown and it will end the program there itself. Okay, so this is about assert statement. Next we should discuss about the try and except black. Okay, that we will see it in tomorrow's class. Thank you.